For the first 3 years of her marriage, Ninny believed she had married her best friend, her gist partner, her gist plug, and her everything, because Tobe used to laugh at her jokes even when they weren't funny, and he used to help her in the kitchen while whistling those off-key songs that made her pretend to cover her ears. He would hug her from behind and say, "My sugar, I can't even balance accounts without thinking about you." Their lives then were simple and sweet, like morning bread with butter. And even though they didn't have everything, they were really happy. However, somewhere between the rent increase, the office pressure, and the slow death of communication between them, something in Tobe changed. He became quieter, always with his phone in hand, scrolling and smiling at things she couldn't see. And whenever she tried to start a conversation, he would nod and give one-word answers. At first, she thought it was work stress. She told herself, "Men go through phases. Let me just give him space." But the space grew wider, and soon it became a whole wall between them. Ninny would wake up early, cook breakfast, iron his shirt, and even send him cheerful messages during work hours. But he would reply with only "okay" or sometimes nothing at all. At night, he would lie beside her and face the wall, breathing deeply and pretending to sleep, while she stared at the ceiling, wondering what she had done wrong. She tried to spice things up. She made new hairstyles, got new perfume, and even tried a new red nightgown she thought he would like. But Tobe's eyes no longer lit up. It was as if she had turned into a shadow in her own home. Their flat, that once echoed with laughter, now felt like a library where two strangers lived. When her friend Zita visited one Saturday afternoon and saw how cold the house was, she shook her head and said, "My dear, you are living like a widow. Imagine telling him you're pregnant now. Ah, his body will change. That man just needs something to shock him back to sense. Fake it until you make it." They both laughed, but that laughter was hollow, as Ninny was already thinking if this stupid idea could really hide her pain. That night she couldn't sleep. She kept turning from one side of the bed to the other while Tobe snored peacefully beside her, and she also kept hearing Zita's voice in her head. She thought about how Tobe used to dream of being a father, how he used to say he would carry his baby on his shoulders to church and call him Junior. Maybe if I told him I was pregnant, he would wake up again, she thought. Maybe he would remember that I was the woman he once adored. By morning, her mind was made up. She would fake a pregnancy, not to deceive him forever, but just to see if he still cared, and to know if there was still any love hiding somewhere behind that cold silence. She told herself it was just a harmless little drama to awaken his attention. After all, women had done worse to save their marriages, hadn't they? So she went to a pharmacy and bought a pregnancy test kit. She sat in the bathroom with shaking hands, staring at the single pink line that appeared. Her eyes were filled with tears, not because of the results, but because she wished it was real. After all, she had always dreamt of having a baby with Tobe. So she took a little pink eyeshadow powder and gently smeared it on the second line until it looked faint but visible. Then she took a deep breath, wiped her tears, and smiled weakly at the mirror. "This is for love," she whispered to her reflection. "This is for my marriage." That evening, when Tobe came back home tired and half distracted, she waited for the right moment. After dinner, she sat beside him on the couch and said, "Tobe, I took a test today." Tobe looked up briefly, half expecting it to be about bills or groceries. But when she showed him the test kit, he froze. His lips parted slightly and his eyes widened for a second before he quickly masked it with a faint smile. "You mean you are pregnant?" he asked. "Yes," Ninny said, smiling sweetly. Tobe hugged her, but she could feel the stiffness in his arms and the hesitation in his breathing. He said, "Wow, that's amazing." But his voice lacked warmth. Still, she convinced herself that maybe he was just surprised and maybe the reality hadn't sunk in yet. Later that night, she watched him from the bed while he scrolled through his phone again, and her chest tightened. She thought he was reading baby articles or checking baby names, but he wasn't smiling this time. Rather, he looked worried and thoughtful, as if his mind was far away. As she closed her eyes, one small thought crossed her mind. What if this plan backfires? But she brushed it aside quickly, because she had already told her mother-in-law, who screamed with joy and prayed over the phone. She had already started something she couldn't stop. However, what many did not know was that on the same night she announced her fake joy, her husband sat in the living room, staring at the test strip on the table and whispering under his breath, "We haven't even been close for weeks. How is this possible?" Then he took his phone, opened a search page and secretly typed, "How to confirm paternity before birth." Moving on from the time after Nenny told him she was pregnant, everything in their small house began to feel like a movie where everyone was acting. Tobe woke up early the next morning, humming a tune that didn't match his mood. He greeted her cheerfully, "Morning, my baby mama." Nenny looked up from the kitchen sink, surprised. "Baby mama? Kai, since when did you start calling me that?" Tobe laughed and said, "Since I became a proud father. You better start eating for two." Nenny blushed a little. It felt strange hearing him talk that way again. For months, he had barely noticed her, and now, suddenly, he was smiling, kissing, and talking about the baby. It felt like love was crawling back into the house slowly, like sunshine sneaking through a curtain. She wiped her hands and smiled. "Okay, daddy-to-be, what do you want for breakfast?" "Anything you cook, I go eat AM," he said, still smiling, but his mind was far away. Because deep down, Tobe wasn't smiling from joy. He was smiling from confusion. He was still replaying the math in his head. "We haven't even touched each other for weeks. How come she's pregnant?" Later that day, while Nenny was napping, Tobe stepped outside to the balcony and made a phone call. "Hello, Ekin, the hospital guy?" he asked. His friend's voice came through, laughing. "Too long time, my guy. What happened? You sound like a man who is hiding from the police." "Eka, I beg no laugh me, I just want to ask you small question. If a woman shows a positive pregnancy test, how can someone confirm if it is real?" "Ooha, you don't turn inspector. Why don't you just believe her?" Ekin asked. Tobe sighed deeply, because something is not adding up. "I just need to know the truth." His friend lowered his voice. "You can bring the test strip. I'll check if it has the pregnancy hormone inside first, but you go ask him normal. Make you no suspect." "Done," Tobe said and ended the call. That evening, Nenny was busy in the kitchen frying plantain when Tobe walked in, pretending to be cheerful. This aroma can wake a dead man," he said, hugging her from behind. Nenny smiled shyly. "You've changed though, all this sweetness. Is it because of the baby?" Tobe laughed. "Of course, you think I'll let my baby starve. Don't you know I can cook for you now?" "Since when?" Nenny asked, laughing. "Since my wife turned expectant mother," Tobe replied as he touched her waist gently. But even as he smiled, his eyes quickly scanned the counter. The test strip she had showed him was lying near the window. And so, when she turned to get salt, he quietly picked it up, slipped it into his pocket, and whispered in his head, "We'll see who is lying." The next day he met Dr. Eichner at the hospital's back office. The man opened the wrap, saw the strip, and laughed. "Tobe, you carry pregnancy test, come try for my lab." "Just help me check em," Tobe said. An hour later, Eichner came back with a grim face. "My guy, this test no show any pregnancy hormone, na fake. In fact, na red ink she use." Tobe froze and stared at him. "You sure?" "As sure as my name, na plain plastic you give me." For a long moment, Tobe didn't say anything. Then he let out a quiet laughter that didn't reach his eyes. "Okay, Ekin, thank you." He left the hospital that afternoon and drove home slowly, his hands tight on the steering wheel. He was angry but also hurt. Why would she lie about something like this? What did I even do to deserve this? When he got home, Nenny was sitting on the couch watching a baby show. She looked up and smiled. "You're back early. I found a beautiful name if it's a boy, Tabana Jr." Tobe smiled faintly. "Nice name." Nenny looked at him. "You don't sound excited." "No, I am now," he lied. "I'm just tired from work." Nenny nodded and leaned her head on his shoulder while he sat stiffly, staring at the screen and thinking of the empty test strip hidden in his car. Over the next few days, Tobe became the most caring husband in town. He brought fruits, vitamins, and a small baby pillow. He even rubbed Nenny's shoulders while watching TV and would say, "You better eat. I don't want my child looking like a broom." Nenny giggled, impressed by his sudden kindness. "You've changed, Tobe. I like this new you." Tobe smiled. "I've just realized what matters, family." But in his heart, he shook his head silently. And then one Saturday, he casually said, "Next week I will follow you to your antenatal checkup." Nenny's spoon froze halfway to her mouth. No need though, my doctor doesn't allow men inside." Tobe tilted his head, pretending to be confused. Which hospital is that one again? It's a private female clinic, Nenny stammered. You won't even find it on Google Map. Tobe smiled and said, okay, my love, no wahala now, I trust you. But that night after she slept, he checked her bag and found no hospital card, no receipt, not even paracetamol. He sighed and said to himself, she's playing me and she thinks I don't know. A few days later, her friend Zita came visiting. Tobe was in the bedroom pretending to sleep, but his eyes were wide awake. Zita whispered, remember to always walk like a pregnant woman. Oh, and don't forget to hold your stomach when you sneeze. This man can be very observant. Both women laughed. I beg, don't make me laugh too much. I'll blow my cover, Nenny said between giggles. Tobe clenched his fist quietly under the blanket and tightened his jaw. When Zita left, he walked into the sitting room and found Nenny singing happily while arranging fruits. You and Zita had fun? He asked calmly. Yes, she came to just me small, Nenny said innocently. Tobe smiled. You both laugh like people plotting a comedy show. Nenny looked at him suspiciously. Are you jealous? Tobe laughed. Jealous of who? Two actresses? Never, Nenny frowned. What do you mean by that? Tobe smiled again. Nothing. Oh, just make sure your script doesn't tear before the movie ends. Script, Nenny repeated in confusion. Forget it, Tobe said and walked away. That night, Nenny lay awake staring at the ceiling as she felt a strange fear she couldn't explain. His words had sounded playful, but his tone carried something sharp. Meanwhile, Tobe sat outside on the balcony, looking at the sky and whispering to himself, let's see who breaks first. Days later, it was a rare cold Sunday evening that usually made Nenny peaceful, but not tonight. Tonight, her heart was beating too fast for reasons she couldn't explain. Tobe had been quiet all day. Too quiet. He wasn't smiling or joking the way he had been this past few weeks. He was simply packing around the house, checking his phone and staring at her belly like a man trying to solve a riddle. Nenny sat on the couch, pretending to scroll through baby name ideas, but her eyes kept drifting towards him. Something about his face worried her. His smile had disappeared and was now replaced by a cold look that made her stomach twist. Tobe, are you okay? Nenny finally asked. Tobe turned slowly and forced a smile. Me, I'm fine. Oh, I'm just thinking about the future. The future, what about it? Nenny asked. Tobe shrugged. Just making sure I prepare for what is coming. Nenny nodded, but her heart didn't settle. There was something in his tone that sounded like an inside joke she didn't understand. Later that night, while she was washing the dinner plates, his phone began to ring on the table. The screen flashed, Dr. Eichner. Tobe quickly picked it up, went to the balcony, and closed the door behind him. That small action, closing the door, was enough to set her pulse racing. He had never done that before. She turned off the tap, slowly wiped her hands, and tiptoed towards the door. The curtains shifted slightly, and through the small space she could hear his low voice. Ekin, thank you again, Tobe was saying. I am just waiting for the right time to end this nonsense. The voice on the other end murmured something, and Tobe laughed bitterly. My brother, imagine, she's not even pregnant. 0 HCG. And the funny part, she's still pretending she doesn't even know I know. The words hit Nenny like a hot iron pressed against her heart. Her breath caught in her throat and she stumbled backward, clutching her chest with her hands. For a moment she thought she would faint. Wait, so he knew. He had known all along, and he was the one pretending. Her eyes burned with tears, but behind the tears came something darker. Anger. Pure, boiling anger. She waited until he came back inside, still on the phone and still laughing quietly. Then she spoke. So all this time you knew. Tobe froze, the phone slipped from his hand. What did you just say? Nenny walked towards him and raised her voice. You knew I wasn't pregnant, right? You have been mocking me behind my back. Tobe opened his mouth, but no words came out. Nenny, no. Don't Nenny me, she shouted as tears streamed down her face. You've been pretending to love me just so you can humiliate me later. What kind of wickedness is that? Tobe rubbed his forehead and retorted, and you, what kind of woman fakes pregnancy to test her husband? Do you even hear yourself? You wanted drama, now you've got it. And just like that, their argument exploded like thunder. I only wanted to see if you still cared, Nenny cried. You've been treating me like furniture in this house. You don't talk to me. You don't touch me, you just exist, so I lied. Yes, but it was because I was dying inside, Tobe. I wanted you to look at me again. Tobe laughed bitterly and clapped his hands slowly. Wow, what a noble reason. You lied to your husband, you deceived your whole family, and you even made my mother start thanking God for a grandchild that doesn't exist. Bravo, Nenny. Nenny stepped closer, shaking with emotion. Don't you dare make me the villain. You started this. You killed the love first. You made me feel invisible. You made me desperate. And you made me ashamed to be, Tobe shot back. You think I didn't notice the fake morning sickness, the lies about antenatal, the pillow stomach? Do you know what it feels like to look at your wife and see a stranger, to sleep beside someone you can't trust? Nenny's hands trembled. So what were you planning to do, expose me, to gather our family and disgrace me? Tobe scoffed. No, I was waiting for the day you would confess, but since you brought the drama yourself, congratulations, show don't start. Nenny slapped him and the sound echoed through the house like lightning splitting the night sky. For a moment there was silence. Then Tobe laughed quietly while touching his cheek. So that is how low we've gone, huh? Nenny glared at him through tears. At least I still feel something. You've turned to stone. You used to love me, Tobe. What happened? Tobe stepped closer until they were face to face. Then maybe you shouldn't have lied. Maybe if you trusted me enough to talk, we wouldn't be standing here like enemies. Nenny broke down and covered her face. I didn't want to lose you, she cried. You already did, Tobe said quietly and then turned away. At that moment, Zita's knock came from the door. Who is that? Nenny snapped. It's me, your Zita, Zita's voice came cheerfully. I brought Suya, Tobe laughed bitterly. Perfect timing, your co-director is here. What do you mean? Zita asked in confusion as she stepped inside. Oh, you are still acting, Tobe asked coldly. You and your friend here deserve an award for Best Actresses of the Year. Fake pregnancy, fake symptoms, fake everything. Maybe next time try to include me in your script. Zita's face drained of color. Wah, how did you? I caught both of you out of my house. Tobe slammed the table so hard that a glass cup fell and shattered. Zita grabbed her bag out of shock. Nenny, let's go. But Nenny stood there crying. Tobe, don't do this, please, I am sorry. Tobe pointed to the door. You broke something that can't be fixed with sorry. Left with no choice, the two women turned and left. As they left, rain began to pour outside. Nenny turned to the door and watched Tobe standing there motionless. She wanted to say something, but her voice failed her. The door closed between them with a final thud, which sounded like love collapsing under the weight of pride and deceit. That night, Tobe sat on the couch staring at the shattered glass pieces on the floor. He cried bitterly. So, this is what we've become, actors in a tragedy we both wrote. The days after the fight felt like someone had squeezed all the juice out of Nenny's life. The rain that week seemed endless. It kept pouring day and night, as if heaven itself was mourning with her. She moved into her sister's apartment in the other part of town, carrying only her broken spirits. Her eyes were always swollen with crying, and her voice was weak from explaining the same story again and again. Everyone had an opinion. Some said she deserved what happened. Others said Tobe was too cruel. But deep down, Nenny knew that none of them understood the full story. She had lied, yes, but not out of wickedness. It came from loneliness, from that desperate ache that sits in a woman's chest when the man she loves stops seeing her. She replayed that last night over and over. She could still see his face when he said, "You already lost me." Those words pierced deeper than any pinch could. Sometimes she would pick up her phone, scroll to his number, and then put it down again. Her pride stopped her from calling. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Tobe wasn't sleeping either. He sat in their empty living room every night, staring at the quiet walls. The laughter that used to echo there was gone, and whenever he moved around, he would find her scarf still hanging on the chair or see her slippers beside the door. And each time, guilt would hit him like a stone. He told himself that he had done the right thing, that she needed to learn a lesson. But the truth was, he missed her voice, her noise, and maybe even her act. Because behind her foolish act was a woman who had simply wanted to be loved again. One evening his mother called him. "Tobe, I heard what happened," she said sharply. "Good evening, Mama," Tobe murmured. "Evening for what? You sent your wife away after how many years? Over what? A test strip?" "Mama, she lied to me," Tobe said bitterly. "And you have never lied before. You think deceit is heavier than pride. That woman stood by you when you lost your job. She sold her jewelry so you could pay your rent, and you can't forgive one mistake." Tobe was silent. His mother sighed and then softened her voice. "My son, when two people start living on who is right instead of who is kind, the marriage will rot. Go and find her before you both become stories people tell." That night Tobe couldn't sleep. Every word his mother said echoed in his mind. And so, around midnight, he got into his car and started driving without knowing where he was going. The streets were half asleep. He parked near a junction and sat there for a long time, gripping the steering wheel tightly. Then, like a man tired of fighting himself, he finally said, "Enough." The next morning, Nenny was sitting on her sister's veranda, lost in thought, when she heard a familiar knock at the gate. Her heart skipped. She froze for a moment and then opened the gate. And there he was, Tobe. He was standing quietly with tired eyes, holding a small nylon bag filled with fruit. He looked thinner and older somehow. "Can I come in?" he asked gently. She nodded, unable to speak. Inside, the silence stretched between them like a wall neither knew how to break. Then finally Tobe spoke. "I didn't come to argue, I came to say I am sorry." Nenny's eyes widened. "You are sorry?" "Yes," Tobe said. "I was angry, hurt, and disappointed, but I was also proud. I should have talked to you instead of planning revenge. I should have been empathetic." Tears filled her eyes instantly. "Tobe, I am sorry too. I know I lied. I know I was stupid. I felt invisible. You stopped touching me. You stopped seeing me. I wanted to know if you still loved me. I was foolish, but it came from love, not evil." Tobe nodded. "I know that now. Mama reminded me. She said, when a woman pretends, it's not always wickedness. It is sometimes a cry for attention." I should have seen the cry instead of the trick. For a moment they were both silent. Then he reached out slowly and touched her hand. "Can we start again?" Nenny laughed between tears. "Start again with what?" "With truth," Tobe said. "No more tests, no more acting, just me and you, unfiltered." Nenny's tears flowed freely now. "Tobe, do you still love me?" Tobe smiled. "I never stopped." They sat there holding hands like two broken people mending each other's cracks. After a while he said, "Come back home. I want us to build it again." Nenny nodded slowly. "Only if you promise to talk to me when you are hurt and listen when I cry, not walk away." Tobe nodded. "Deal." When they returned home that evening, the house felt different. They didn't talk much. They just cleaned, arranged, cooked rice together, and laughed at small things like old times. Later that night, when they sat on the same couch where their lies had begun, Tobe said, "You know what is funny? The fake pregnancy brought something real back, the truth." Nenny smiled. "Then maybe it wasn't all fake after all." Tobe nodded. "Yes, but next time please, let's keep the red ink drama." Nenny laughed. "No more fake anything. I have had enough." Months later, they had learned to become more honest and sensitive. And then one quiet evening, as the sun went down, Nenny leaned against Tobe in the living room and giggled. "Do you know what's crazy?" "What?" Tobe asked. "That I am actually pregnant now," Nenny said sweetly. Tobe froze, looked at her, and then he burst into laughter. "You better not be joking again." Nenny smiled and showed him the real test strip. "No makeup this time, it's for real." Tobe held her close, and his laughter turned to tears. Then, maybe God decided to write his own ending for our story. And just like that, the house that was once a stage for fake actors turned into a genuine space for a family. Thank you for watching this story. Kindly share your thoughts about this story with me in the comment section. What lessons did you learn from this story? Kindly share the story out with your loved ones and give the story a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel if you've not done so by now. Until I bring another story your way. Bye.